Um, my name's Nancy Jensen. I know some of you, and the rest of you, welcome. This is the Swing Shift, and it is our weekly Hangout Habits. This week, we're going to be talking about LinkedIn for your job search. And as a reminder, Hangout Habits are every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. We are live and we are online. So we're broadcasting out on Facebook Live, and we're also live on the Zoom call. So our goal with the Hangout Habits is to talk about relevant job search topics and in a concise, compact, and compelling forum. I'm all about the C's today. Our purpose is to give you actionable, practical tips to get in the habit of focusing on your job search. Particularly right now, it's easy to get distracted with other things. And so we're working very hard to give you guidance and guest speakers that will help you keep on track. We do provide breakout rooms, sometimes for practice and sometimes for networking. Because we're all home, getting out and meeting new folks is a little bit challenging, so we're working to alleviate that. And so each week you'll meet some new folks in our breakout rooms. And we have accountability and report backs. We do have a community page, which we want you to please join if you haven't already. We have lots of resources. And without further ado, let's talk about today's topic. I am delighted to introduce Chelsea Cooper. She's a women's advocate and professional development instructor. She teaches courses for a variety of nonprofit and for-profit organizations, including the Jubilee Women's Center, the Product Management Consortium, and the Seattle Highline Public Schools. Chelsea has worked for organizations including Starbucks, Optum, Seattle King County Clinic, and Amazon. Like many of you, she's had some big changes in her life lately. She is a new mom, and we welcome you to the ranks, Chelsea. It's a wild ride. Today, she is going to be talking about LinkedIn for your job search. She's got some fantastic tips and tricks, so we'll be handing things over to Chelsea. And she even has an interesting LinkedIn story to talk about with her own job. So without further ado, Chelsea, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. It's nice to digitally meet you all. So I have been teaching this class for coming up on 4 years now. And this is intended to be very interactive. So I am going to be walking you through some elements in LinkedIn itself, so you get to see my profile. But I do want to make sure that this time is valuable to all of you. So please, if you had any questions over the course of the hour, please put your questions in the chat and I can answer them as I go. You don't need to, wait until the end or anything like that. To give you an idea of why I think that LinkedIn is so important, I'm going to start out by sharing my screen. So whenever I start this class, I like to start out by sharing why LinkedIn is important, because there are so many different social media channels now. There's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of these things. Why do I need to put effort into another one of these services? And the way that I like to think about LinkedIn is your professional brand to the world. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those others, all of those have a personal component. You're friends with your family and, the people that you interact with on a regular basis. You can share personal things. LinkedIn is just for your professional persona. So uh-oh. Can you all still hear me?
Now we can.
Yes.
I lost my screen.
There you are. Let me unmute you.
Here we go. As I was saying, LinkedIn is essentially your social media channel for your professional persona. So anything that you put on LinkedIn should be contributing to that goal. That is the only reason to use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a technological way to maintain, grow, and continue to cultivate your professional network. It's the only reason to use it. If that's not why you're using it, then it's not worth your time. One of the things that LinkedIn can do for you is it can essentially provide networking opportunities even when you aren't actively networking. So especially right now, when everybody is at home, there's no real opportunity to be meeting people in person, LinkedIn can work for you in a way that you're just sitting at home can't. And the way that I know this is the most recent job move that I made was directly caused by LinkedIn. The job that I have right now, I did not apply for the job. I was contacted by the hiring manager via LinkedIn, and he saw my profile, thought that I would be a good match for the role, and reached out to me and asked me to apply. So LinkedIn has very direct impact on your professional development, and that is why I think that it's such an important tool to learn. So just to start out, as with any social media platform, the big thing that you want to remember is that the reason that it is free to use is that you are the product, which means that all of the information that you give to it, it is going to use to make money. That's what companies do, which means that you have to think about the information that you want it to have. The more information that you give it, the harder it will work for you. The more complete your profile is, the more times you post, the more information you share, the higher up it's going to put you in search results because the company wants you to give it more information. But you have to keep in mind that everything you put on it is essentially public. And so that's something that every person kind of has to decide for themselves, is how much information or do they want about themselves available online. And that's really a personal choice. But I always like to remind people of that as they're building out their profiles. Now, when you think about anything related to your professional development, your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, attention to detail is going to be absolutely key. This means that things like formatting, typos, even making sure your grammar is correct, making sure all your tenses are in line, all of that is equally important on LinkedIn as it is on your resume. So just make sure that everything that you do on LinkedIn is very, very clear. Now, when you log into LinkedIn for the first time, or for the first time in a long while, you're going to see LinkedIn is essentially going to prompt you through the completion of your profile. And LinkedIn does a very good job of this. So that's actually not what I'm going to focus on in our class today, because LinkedIn is going to go through all of those things for you. What I'm going to focus on is some things that LinkedIn is going to tell you to do that you should not listen to it on. And the first one is two key elements of your profile. The first is your headline. Your headline is this sentence right here that shows up right below your name, and your summary, which is this about section of your profile. Now, what LinkedIn is going to tell you to do is every time you fill out your profile, whatever your current job is, LinkedIn is going to prompt you to update your headline. And then your headline will just say, program manager at blah, blah, blah. Your headline is the only part of your profile that shows up in search results. So if someone searches for, say, program manager, which is what I am, in the search results, you're going to see your picture and your headline. And I can show you what that looks like. So you can see the person's name, the person's picture, and their headline. So this first result is actually a really good example of what LinkedIn is going to tell you to do. It's going to tell you to make your headline your current job title. that is a complete waste of your most valuable real estate on your profile. You have about 150 characters, and you want this sentence to answer the question, what can I do for the person that is searching? What can I do for the person who is looking at my profile? And so when you think about your headline, there are a couple of questions that I think are good sort of starting points to get you started on your headline. And the first is you want to think about, what do you want to do? What is it that you're trying to accomplish with your LinkedIn profile? Are you trying to get a job that's in the same field that you currently are? Are you trying to hire people for an open role? Are you trying to grow a business that you own? That is going to inform what your headline reads. And you want to think about kind of shrinking down all of your value into a few key action verbs, and you want to focus on what the end result of what you do is. So for example, my headline has 3 parts. So my headline is the 2 job titles that I'm most likely to have in whatever role I have, whatever company I'm with. It has the industry that I'm focused on. So I'm focused on human resources, but also on development. And then my action statement. So this is the end result of what I do. When I manage the programs that I manage, when I teach the classes that I teach, I amplify the impact of the people that I work with, and I can improve lives. And that's something that is the reason that I get up every day. It's the reason that I go to work every day. And it also adds an element of humanity rather than just saying, this is what I do. That's one way of approaching your headline. Some people will have a specific value statement. So they'll say, you know, I help businesses, you know, grow sales. Some people will say, you know, kind of a summary of their experience, you know, administrative professional with 25 years of experience. None of those are wrong. It's purely a stylistic thing. I personally have had the most success with this particular format where you have kind of the main titles, industry, and then your action statement. But if you're trying to, if you're not really sure what you want to do, if you're not sure exactly what job title you want, this format might not work as well for you. So I just wanted to share that there are different ways to approach this headline. Another thing that you don't want to do in your headline is say seeking opportunities or looking for a job. Again, that's a waste of your very, very limited real estate on your headline. And there are different ways within LinkedIn to turn that setting on to let people know that you're open to opportunities. If you're hiring, a lot of times I'll see people put, you know, hiring in their headline. And I think that that can still be valuable. But when you're actually looking for a role, that's not what you want to put in your headline. When you are looking for opportunities and you want people to know, when you go to your profile, this section right here, right underneath your headline, that's what you can use to show people that you're open. So you just hit click, get started. You can tell us what job titles you're interested in, what job locations you're interested in, the job types, and then you can set it to either have it available to only recruiters or to all LinkedIn members. And the reason for this is if you're at a company and you want to leave and you don't want that company to know that you want to leave, you could potentially select just recruiters. But honestly, that's closing your profile to a huge, huge number of people that could potentially open a hiring door for you. And so I recommend that if you are looking for opportunities and you do turn this on, that you select that all LinkedIn members. And if your, you know, boss goes to your LinkedIn profile and sees that you're, you know, open to opportunities and they, you know, come to you and are concerned about that, then you really should be leaving that company. Because at any given time, you should always be open to opportunities. And just having this setting turned on should not be a red flag for any good manager. Now, when you get into your profile, the second most important piece is this about section. This in some ways is similar to what you would write in a cover letter, but it's not entirely the same. So you're going to click this pencil to edit it, and you're going to be able to fill it in. It's about 500 characters that you're allowed to use here. And you want to essentially have the big wins of your career. You know, your top skills, top accomplishments. In my case, because I do sessions like this, I'll usually include where kind of my next speaking arrangement is going to be, which means that I'm updating this on a regular basis. So I usually am updating this about once a month to make sure that it's still current. The other thing that I want to highlight about this is when someone goes to your profile, they're only going to see the first 2 sentences of your summary. They're not going to see the full, you know, paragraph long summary. And so you want these first 2 sentences to really be impactful. This is essentially your chance to pique someone's interest and make them want to read more, because you want to encourage them to click this see more button. Now, in some ways, this is a very important part of your profile, because this is the only part of your profile where you have the opportunity to tell your story in a way that is not formulaic. This is your chance to speak with your own voice. However, a lot of times people are not going to read it. They're going to scroll right past it and they're just going to go to your experience. So I'd say make sure that this is kept up to date. Make sure that it's, you know, bringing out the best of your work history. If you're someone like me that has had a lot of different roles in a lot of different areas, this summary can be a good opportunity to bring all of that together and sort of summarize who you are as a professional. And then finally, down at the very bottom, this is a way that you can put keywords into your profile. There's a couple of different ways to do this. This is one of them, but you want this to be at the very, very bottom, because you want the machines to be able to tick through and find it when someone's searching, but you don't necessarily want it to be at the top when someone's only going to be able to see those first 2 lines. So you're going to want to put this at the very bottom of your profile, and just, you know, put it in list form, any keywords that you think someone might want to search. Any questions about the headline or the summary?
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? Thank you so much. I have a little question. When you at the bottom, you also have pronoun she, her. That has a purpose. You could explain that.
Absolutely. So one of the areas of human resources that I personally am very passionate about is the inclusion and diversity subset of HR. Sharing your pronouns is a way to be inclusive to individuals where their biological sex that they may have been born with does not match their gender expression. So in my case, I'm what's called a cisgender woman. So I was born biologically female, and my gender expression is female. So they match. So I share my pronouns to be inclusive of those where that is not true. So someone might use a different pronoun. They might use they might use she, they might use he when they were born biologically female. And so that's just a way of showing that inclusivity. And it's a part of my passion around inclusion and diversity. But great question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Chelsea, I have a quick question. Like you, I have a diversity of background. I mean, and I'm also at this place where I'm making a career shift, and you know, I had a technical engineering background, and I'm trying to kind of get into philanthropy, but at the same time, I just need a job, right? So I'm at this place where when I do my LinkedIn, do I, like, every time I apply for something that's a little bit different, do I just change it to represent my latest job application? Because
so really,
jack of many trades, you know.
Yeah. It's a really good question. So when it comes to LinkedIn, you want the key components of your profile to match your resume. So you want any companies that you worked for, dates and titles to match your resume. The bullet points under each of those do not necessarily have to match your resume exactly. So when someone goes to your LinkedIn profile, you want those key details to be the same, But if you're highlighting, something very specific in your resume and it's, a little bit more broad in LinkedIn, that's not an issue. It's okay for those two not to match. What you do want is you want your LinkedIn profile to be a little bit more vague and a little bit more broad than your resume would be. So your resume might have very specific examples, very specific outcomes. With your LinkedIn profile, you want it to be a little bit more generic, kind of high level what your role was. And then you want someone to essentially be interested enough by your profile to actually get to your resume. Because when you submit a resume, every resume you submit should be being tailored to the individual job description, even if you're applying to the same kinds of jobs at all of the different companies. And so for LinkedIn, as long as those kind of high-level details match, company, title, dates, it's okay if your resume and your bullet points don't match exactly. I would not recommend updating your LinkedIn profile to match your resume every time. A, that's just a lot of extra time that you don't need to spend, and B, no one's going to look at your profile that carefully. Any other questions about headline or summary
Thank you.
before I move on?
Oh,
Hi,
Chelsea.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead. This
This
is
is-
Nancy. We
oh,
had in the chat, someone asked, what about the place where how do you talk about exploring career opportunities, particularly if you're switching?
Can you tell me, so are you asking how do you express what opportunities you're looking for, or how do you express that you don't really know what you want to do yet?
I think both.
Okay. So if you're looking for various opportunities, there are a couple of different titles that you might use. When you turn on this function to say that you're open, you can add multiple job titles. So when I had mine showing that I was open, I had program manager, HR business partner, project manager, senior project manager, all of the different job titles that I might have based on my experience. When you're thinking about, when you're not really sure what you want, that's where you can kind of let your profile work for you. So in this, kind of summary section, you can talk about the things that you're passionate about. So it might not be a specific job title that you're interested in, but think about what impact you want to make. Whenever I'm coaching early in career folks, when they're, not really sure what they want to do, or they're trying to get to that next level, I always tell them, don't focus on the title. Don't focus on, I want to get promoted to, that next level. Focus on the impact that you can have. Do you want a broader scope? Do you want to be able to impact more people? Do you want to have more responsibility? Talking about your career in terms like that versus just focusing in on a title or something like that can actually tell your story in a much more meaningful way and make people much more excited about promoting you versus you just saying, well, I want to be a senior project manager by X date. So if you're not sure what you want to do, I would say talk about what you're passionate about and what might interest you about a job, not necessarily what the title might be. And that's where that summary section can be really helpful because it can help you pull all of those different pieces together. Now, because LinkedIn is, again, designed to cultivate your network, one of the things that I tell people is you want to be using LinkedIn when you don't need it. So what I do is I will post to LinkedIn usually once a day on business days. So basically 5 times a week. I do not actually go into my LinkedIn profile and do that every time. I use an external service to help me do that. So I'm going to talk about what to post, and then I'm going to show you that external tool. Now, every time that you post on LinkedIn, whatever you post is going to show up on your connections newsfeed. So the same as Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. So what you want to do is anything that you post, you want it to be relevant to your career or relevant to who your professional persona is. So in my case, a lot of the things that I post are related to diversity and inclusion, related to human resources, related to women's issues, and related to project and program management. So I will sometimes comb through my feed and find, you know, things that I think are interesting, and I'll share those. Sometimes I'll, you know, be reading through the Seattle Times and I'll find an article that I think is interesting and I'll post that. The big thing that you want to think about when you're posting is you want to be, number one, always positive. So LinkedIn is not the place for, you know, talking about your struggles, talking about things that are difficult, talking about, you know, I've applied to 500 jobs and I still haven't found one. That is definitely something you should have an outlet to talk about, but LinkedIn isn't it. Your LinkedIn wants to be things like attended, you know, a seminar on inclusion and diversity from X company, you know, and then maybe one thing that you learned from that. This is a really great opportunity for you to show, especially if you're not currently working, that you're working to stay current. You're still engaging with whatever industry you're interested in. You're still, you know, getting out there, learning, being curious. And that's how you can show people that you have the ability to do the job, even when you don't currently have a job or the job that you want.
Hey, Chelsea,
Now,
I have a question from the chat that's kind of
Of course.
related to this.
Of course.
Particularly when you're looking for a job, you've left your former position and you don't want your last company listed in your profile. Is there a way to get around that, one? And B, it seems like posting is a way to kind of counter that. Does that make sense?
So you don't want to include your last known company on your profile?
Yeah, that somebody is asking this. Yeah, it must have been under less than positive circumstances.
Yeah. So when it comes to your job history, let me show you what I'm talking about here. So when it comes to your job history, as a general rule, you do want this section to be complete. So even if you left your last company under, you know, less than ideal circumstances, the last thing that you want is a company to run a background check on you when you're at the final, you know, step of getting an offer, and a company that you didn't disclose to pop up and have the company ask, well, why didn't this person include this? I didn't know that this person worked there. I want to know why they didn't include it. So thinking about just the experience section, I would make it as complete as possible. You don't actually have to have these bullet points. You can just have title, company, and dates, and just leave it at that. If it's something that you really don't want to include, you know, for whatever reason, again, you know, your profile is a very personal thing, you can leave it off. Just know that there is always a possibility that during the course of the interview and offer process, many companies now do run background checks, and that employment likely will show up on that background check. Now to your point about posting, so especially if you're, say, trying to switch industries, or you have a lot of different jobs that you might want to do, your posting can kind of create a narrative of who you are as a professional beyond just your current job title. And so that's where posting can become really, really important. Also, when you post, the more times you post, the more likely someone is going to see your post in their news feed and therefore click on your profile, and the higher in the search results you're going to show up. Going back to that whole "you are the product" statement, the more information that you give LinkedIn, the more it's going to give you back. So the more you post, the higher up in search results you're going to be, and the easier you're going to be to find. I have found that if you search for program manager in HR in Seattle, my profile is usually the first one that pops up. Now, because I don't want you to spend all day in LinkedIn, and just like any other social media platform, LinkedIn can be a void. It can suck you in, and it can take all of your time if you let it. So here's what I recommend when you're just, there are a couple of different external services that people have used in order to post to their social media platforms. This is the one that I use. There are multiple different services, so you don't necessarily have to use this one. This is what I use. And it's called Hootsuite. So Hoot like what an owl does, and then Suite like a hotel. It's free. They do have upgrades, but you can ignore that. And it essentially allows you to schedule posts. So you go to this publisher, and you can see that I have scheduled 1 post per day for this week. So while I am teaching this class, I'm going to post to LinkedIn because I have scheduled Hootsuite to do it for me. So this can be a great way. You basically go into LinkedIn once a week. I will often do it on Sundays. You spend 15 minutes going through your news feed, finding, 5 interesting articles or interesting posts that are related to sort of your professional persona, and then you can schedule them, and then you're done. And then you don't have to think about it for another week. So that can be a nice way to get started if you don't want to be in it every day. And I highly recommend not being in it every day, especially if you're job hunting, because that's a lot of emotional energy just to do the job hunting, and adding LinkedIn to that is just too much. Now, so when you first enter your LinkedIn, you're going to see this. You're going to see your news feed. So this can be a good opportunity to find posts from people that you're connected with. It can be a good opportunity to see job updates. So if someone gets promoted, you can, say congratulations. And your notifications are things that are going to tell you what's happening with your profile. So this notification section here, it'll show up just like any other social media with a little number saying how many you have. And so it'll show you how many people have viewed your profile. And at this point, I'm going to talk about the paywall for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is free. They have 4 different premium accounts that are targeted toward different things. So they have one for job searching, one for growing your network and managing your reputation, which truthfully, I still don't fully understand what that is. Find more leads if you're in sales, and then find and hire talent faster. It costs $30 a month last time I looked, and it is not worth it. In my opinion, some people, find it valuable, especially if you're job hunting. It does give you the ability to see all of the different people that viewed your profile. I do not think it's worth it. I think it's a waste of money. That's my opinion. So if you want to do it, you can do a free month trial so you can see, what it's like. And it does allow you to send messages to people that you aren't connected to. However, I'm going to show you a way to do that for free. So going back to your notifications, this is a good way to find things to post. So someone that I'm connected with shared a post. LinkedIn thinks that it might be interesting to me. So this might be a place that I pull something to post myself. This also will tell me when I have a post, how many people have viewed it. Every view is an opportunity for someone to click on your profile and potentially be interested in you for employment. I have this daily rundown. It's basically kind of a daily digest. And then it'll show you how many times you appeared in search results this week. So this can be helpful in some ways because it can see how the things you're putting out into LinkedIn are affecting things, but it's not necessarily something to get too caught up on. You don't want to get too wrapped up in how many people have viewed your profile or how many people have viewed your post, because that's really not, it's not a metric that you really want to put a lot of stock in. You generally just want to know that you're interacting with LinkedIn on a semi-regular basis. And that you're putting information out that is current and accurate. So the whole purpose of LinkedIn, as I said, is to grow your professional network. So now we're going to talk about this My Network section. When you go to this My Network section, you're going to see all of the invitations that you have. So these are people that are reaching out to connect with you. One of the biggest pet peeves that I have, and if you don't get anything else from this class, this is the one thing that I want you to take away. So pay attention. When you connect with someone on LinkedIn, one of the easiest ways to find people is through this people you may know section. And LinkedIn makes it so easy. You can just hit this connect button and, you know, do the connection. You can do a bunch of them all at once. It's super easy. But what that does is if you just hit this connect button, it's going to send an invitation that looks like this. So I don't know this person. This is a random person that wants to connect with me. I don't have any context for why this person wants to connect with me. I don't know them. I haven't worked with them. I don't know why they want to connect with me. I don't see why I would connect with this person. And that's what happens when you hit this connect, is it just sends a generic, you know, run-of-the-mill invitation. What you want to do is you want to click on the person's face to go to their profile, and then you want to click connect, because it will give you this option. If you do it through the previous screen, it doesn't give you this prompt. If you do it this way, you can add a note. I have connected with dozens of people that I have never met because they included a note. It doesn't have to be the Great American Novel. It can be as simple as, hey, Jessica, was great working with you. Starbucks, would love to stay connected here. Now, I did actually work with this person, so I am going to send this invitation, but that's all that it needs to be. It could be, you know, was great to meet you at X networking event. It could be, really enjoyed your post about blank, would love to be connected to you here. Whatever it is, whatever reason you have, you know, for connecting with the person, would love to learn more about your role with X, would love to, you know, buy you coffee sometime, or, you know, do an informational interview. Whatever it is, whatever the reason you have for connecting with this person, just put it in the note. And then you can send the invitation, and that note will be included in the invite to that person. The way that I think of it is when you're networking with someone, you don't want to walk up to someone and just say, hi, would you like to give me a job? You want to introduce yourself, tell the person a little bit about yourself, tell the person why you might want to be talking to them, and then eventually get to that point. So this is that way of adding that personal touch. So if this is the only thing you remember from the class, remember, click the person's face and then click connect. Don't just hit connect. It's a little bit more time, a little bit more effort, but it makes a big difference. Now, it's up to you when you receive an invitation whether or not you want to accept. There are different schools of thought on this. Some people feel that any connection is a good connection. Some people feel that you should maintain your network to just people that you know or just people that you've worked with. I think that there are advantages to both sides. The way that I approach it is if someone can tell me why they want to connect with me if I don't know them, then I usually will. If they just send me a generic one like this, I'll usually say no. When you look here, you can also just see some information about your network. So you can see how many connections you have, how many contacts you have. Those are people you've actually messaged with, people that you follow, and any groups that you're a part of. So going back to that paywall question, you can send someone a message by offering to connect with them and including a personal message. So the LinkedIn ability of sending that in-mail to someone you're not connected with, just send the person a connection and include the note in there. You can get around the paywall, and in the end, you probably will end up with a connection, which is better anyway. That's one of the reasons I think that the paywall is not worth it. Now, if there is someone that you really look up to or admire, but you're a little bit too, you don't necessarily want to connect with that person. You don't feel like you know them well enough. I always use the example of Kevin Johnson, who is the CEO of Starbucks. I've met him a few times just in passing when I worked at Starbucks, but he does not actually know who I am. So I did not feel comfortable connecting with him. A lot of people do. A lot of people will just, you know, send a connection to anyone. And again, this is solely about, you know, kind of your personal choice. But if you don't want to necessarily connect with the person, you do have the option of following them. So just like on Twitter, you can follow the person. This doesn't send anything to them. They don't have to accept it, but it allows you to see their posts in your feed. So if there's someone that you really respect, you know, Brene Brown or someone like that, you can follow them on LinkedIn without connecting. So that's another way to stay connected with someone without having them actually have to approve the connection. Any questions about the My Network part of LinkedIn?
Yeah, Kelsey, is that how you pronounce your name? Thank you. So do you know anything about, do you have any recommendations on numbers, KPIs? For example, it's important to have more than 500 people, more than 1,000 people that you're connected with. Is there any advice on that?
Once you hit 1,000, once you hit, I think it's actually I think it's 500 now.
I think it's 500, yeah.
Yeah, it's 500. So once you hit 500, LinkedIn stops counting. So if you go to your profile, it shows how many connections you have. So once you hit 500, anything beyond that is, the only time that when I look at someone's profile, I kind of raise my eyebrow is when their connections are a very, very small number. So like 12. You know, it's clear that the person has just started their profile, and that's completely fine. But I would say if you're trying to build up your profile, ideally, you could eventually, if you could eventually get to that 500 plus, that would be great. But I'd say, you know, start with finding 100 connections. And this could be, you know, friends, family, you know, people that you've worked with in the past, you know, people that, you know, connect with me. All of you can send me a connection and I will accept if you include a note of why you know me. So that can be a good way to sort of get started if you don't have a profile yet. But that 500 mark is kind of the point where LinkedIn stops counting. So that would be kind of the ideal point that you could potentially get to. Good question.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay. Now, if you're using LinkedIn to find a job, which I am guessing that a lot of you are, this job section is what is going to be helpful to you. So you can save jobs on LinkedIn. You can set job alerts for specific titles or specific companies. You can search for your next job. And then based on your profile, it will suggest jobs to you. One note about this is I have found that LinkedIn, just like all other social media platforms, sometimes their job postings are not as up to date as I would like. So if you see a job on LinkedIn, usually you can click it and you can apply using LinkedIn, or you can click on the job to get more information. Usually you can. Usually if you click it, it'll send you to the actual page that has the job. Apparently this person has not included that information when they posted the job. So you can apply using LinkedIn. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. At the end of the day, you're still going to have to go through the process of re-entering all of the same information from your resume anyway. So it's really up to you. If you feel that your profile is really strong, definitely share it. If you're still not so sure about your profile, or maybe you're just getting started, then you can not do this and that will be just fine. There we go. That's how you do it. So this will take you to the actual page for the job. And this way you can make sure that it's still up to date. Now, because the whole point of LinkedIn is to grow your network, this piece right here, this connections piece, this is why LinkedIn is beneficial for your job hunt. You can click this connections link. So these people all work or have worked at Amazon, my current company. And so I could potentially reach out to those folks and say, hey, I saw this job for Warner Media. I'm interested in it. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Can you tell me who the hiring manager is? Can you introduce me to a recruiter? This is the point where LinkedIn can really benefit your job search, because last I saw, I believe that they say now 85% of jobs are filled without being posted, are filled through knowing someone. And so having the ability to actually know people in the company and potentially get an introduction is where LinkedIn can really help you with that process. So I used to work at Starbucks. I worked there for 4 years. I know a lot of people. So I know about 300 people that could introduce me to someone at Starbucks if I were interested in applying for this particular job. And so that would be a really great way for me to get my foot in the door if that was a job that I was interested in.
And Chelsea, I have a question. Let's say that
Yep.
you're already connected to someone. What would be like a positive way to ask for that connection and start the process of getting connected to either for an informational interview about the new org or getting to know the hiring manager? Like what would that step look like?
Let's see. I'll use this one because I actually have direct connections to this one. So you click that connections link. So these are all of the people that work at Starbucks that I'm currently connected to. And the way you know that you're connected to them is it has this first behind it. First means that you're directly connected. Second means you are connected to someone who is connected to that person. Third means that there's an additional person, and on down the line. It usually, LinkedIn only shows third-degree connections. So I would say first degree and second degree connections are the ones that are really helpful. Third degree, it kind of becomes a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon situation, and it's not really helpful. So if I wanted to contact Jennifer, I would hit message, and it would pop up a little chat. So you can actually see when I connected with Jennifer, that was the note that I sent to her in order to be connected. She was on a panel that I helped put together when I was at Starbucks. So I would just write a message, and I might say, hey Jennifer, hope that this message finds you well. I tend to write a little bit on the formal side, so you don't necessarily have to do it in exactly the way I'm going to say, but I might say, hey Jennifer, hope this message finds you well. I noticed that Starbucks has X role posted right now. As you may know, I have a background in program management for 12 years, delivering results, blah, 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 blah. I would love to talk with you about this position, or if you wouldn't mind introducing me to someone that I could talk to about this position, I would really appreciate it. Now, this is where I talk about my analogy for your professional network. Your professional network is a lot like a garden. You want to be cultivating your professional network when you don't need it, because then when you need it, it will be there. And the way that I think about that is, if you want to have vegetables in your vegetable garden, you can't just go to your garden and expect vegetables to be there. You have to plant your vegetables, 3 to 6 months before, water them, care for them, and then when you need the vegetables, they're going to be there. Your professional network is the same way. You can continue to cultivate that network and keep that network healthy by posting things on LinkedIn, by congratulating people when they have job updates on LinkedIn. Sometimes I'll, see something that someone posted and I'll just drop them a note and say, hey, really enjoyed, what you posted, or I'll comment, hey, really enjoyed this article. Thank you for sharing. And that's just a way of maintaining that personal connection. That's what LinkedIn's purpose is in the end. It's a digital way to maintain that human connection so that when you do need someone for something, you're not just dropping them a line out of nowhere. You have that relationship already built that you can then build on instead of trying to build a relationship and ask for something at the same time.
Thank you. That's so helpful, Chelsea.
Absolutely. So just to give you an example, so this is someone that I'm connected with. They started a new position. This showed up in my notifications. So I could click say congrats, and LinkedIn is going to prompt me to send them a message, which only they can see, which does not actually show that you are actively engaging with your network to the rest of your network. So you don't want to click say congrats. You want to click on the notification itself, which will take you to the post about this person's job update, and you want to comment and say, congratulations. And then just post that, or you want to like it. When you think about, kind of all of the ways that you can interact with LinkedIn, you can comment on people's posts, you can post yourself, you can like, you can comment. LinkedIn also has these different reactions now. I don't think anybody really cares. Most people still use like anyway, so don't stress about which reaction to use. All of those are going to show that you're engaging with the platform, and they're going to encourage the platform to put you higher in search results.
So Chelsea, this is Sarah. We have just a couple more minutes left. People usually need to start dropping off at about 11. So just a heads up on that. And then we have about 3 or 4 questions that I can ask at the end from the chat.
Great. The one last thing that I do always want to highlight for people, just because of some of the organizations that I work with, privacy can often be a very, very important piece of how people interact with any form of social media. And so I'd just like to highlight this privacy section. So you go to your profile, you click, and you go to this settings and privacy section. So this allows you to change all kinds of things. So you can change how public your profile is, you can change who can see your information, who can see your connections, who can connect with you. If you're concerned about security in any way, if there's someone specific that you don't want to be able to find you, this privacy section can be really helpful. And you can block or hide your profile from specific people if that is something that you feel that you need to do. You can also make it so that your profile will not show up in Google search results or search engine search results. I have my profile set to completely public because the only information that I put on my LinkedIn profile is information that I am comfortable with everyone in the world seeing. But I do know that there are some people that have specific people or specific groups that they may not want to be able to find them. And so I do like to just highlight that privacy section. And that is the end of sort of the prepared things that I wanted to go over. And so I'll now open it up for general questions.
Okay, I'm going to start off from the questions in the chat. So the first one is from Andrea, and she's asking, how does certificate programs and continued education impact your LinkedIn profile? And she said, I've noticed LinkedIn displays the most recent university. Do you have an opinion on this?
Anything that you do to add to your resume should absolutely be added to LinkedIn. So going back to, when you log in, LinkedIn is going to sort of prompt you through all of the various pieces of your profile. You can fill in all of your job experience. I will also note, you do not have to only include paid experience in your work experience. If you have a volunteer role that you feel really adds to your professional skills, put it in your work experience. Nobody is going to, like, you know, come after you because you didn't get paid for something. Your education, so if you do have a certificate, you can either put it in this education section or this licenses and certifications section, especially if it's something that is directly applicable to a job that you might want. So like an SPHR certification, for example, if you are an HR business partner, you definitely want to put it in your profile, because then when people search for it, you're gonna show up in those search results as having that certification. Volunteer experience, again, you can add, you know, whatever it might be. Skills and endorsements. The endorsements function is a really old function from the very beginning of LinkedIn. Don't worry about getting endorsements. Nobody pays any attention to them anyway. Skills, these are things that you can add, and these are essentially, again, keyword searches that someone might be looking for. So you can add up to 50, and you can choose your top 3, which will be displayed without someone expanding your profile. It's just another way to add keywords so that if someone searches for something, they can find you. For example, my top 3 skills are program management, facilitation, and HR. And that brings me down to recommendations. So you can give and receive recommendations. If someone's looking at your profile really thoroughly and they get down to your recommendations, it's never a bad thing to have them. I wouldn't stress too much about having a lot of them. Your profile and your work experience are probably going to be what people are going to pay more attention to anyway.
So along with Chelsea, the volunteer experience you were talking about, we had someone that asked if it's not applicable to a role that they're looking for, or they weren't using those same skill sets, should they still add it to their profile? And where should they add it?
Yeah. So when it comes to work experience, as a general rule, I recommend that you put all of your work experience in LinkedIn all the way back to the beginning of time. You're only going to have usually the top 4 or 5 actually show up on your profile, and the rest are going to be collapsed like this. And someone would actually have to click on that in order to see the rest of them. It is also completely up to you. So if there's you know, job experience that you feel like is not applicable at all, you can always leave it out. What I usually tell people when they have job experience they feel is not applicable, think about the transferable skills that you got from that. Even, you know, being a stay-at-home mother, you're doing project management, you're doing resource management, you're doing conflict resolution. There are all sorts of things that you're getting from that experience, even if you're not being paid for your very vital work.
So would you say if the work or the volunteer experience, let's say it was at a local food bank, to add that to the bottom of your page in the volunteer section?
I would, because it adds a touch of humanity to your profile. And if someone who is hiring sees in your profile that you volunteer at a food bank and they volunteer at the same food bank, they might think, "Ooh, that person volunteers at my same food bank. They must be a good person." And, you know, there's a certain degree of bias that goes into hiring, and any way that you can have that bias work for you instead of against you, the more opportunities you have to connect with someone or have someone feel like they have something in common with you, the better.
Awesome. Okay, so this question is from Kay Duke, and she asked, if you're trying to transition from industry A to industry B, but still want a job now, in industry A, how do you balance A versus B posts? So how do you balance where you're at versus where you want to go?
Yeah. When it comes to your posts, I think that you can include both. So you can include things about the current industry that you're in, but then also, you know, post things or post about trainings you're taking in the industry that you're trying to get into. You want to include all of your job experience, and you can use these bullets to, you know, highlight the skills that might be transferable. And then you can also leverage your summary to talk about, you know, I have experience in X industry, you know, blah, 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 you know, the things that I'm good at there. I'm also very interested in new industry because blah, 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 blah. You know, again, that that why you want to do what you want to do piece. And then you can kind of have them both exist simultaneously in your profile.
Great. And then I have two more questions, but they are kind of related. So the first is from Varsha, and she said a lot of HR experts are sharing tips and tricks on how to stay engaged on LinkedIn, and how should she separate out the good versus the bad? And then along with this, it was speaking to who you should follow, like professional versus personal interest. So I think it's what content should you be taking in right now?
For following, you can really follow whoever you want. So it could be people that you're professionally interested in. When it comes to connections, personal connections can be really helpful to pad your connection numbers. So, you know, connect with your mom, connect with your sister. When it comes to that line between kind of professional and personal can be a little bit gray. So you definitely want to steer clear of anything that you wouldn't say in a job interview. So anything related to politics, religion, things like that, that you wouldn't necessarily discuss in a job interview, I'd say steer clear in LinkedIn, unless your job specifically is related to that. Other than that, you know, I'm really interested, I volunteer at the Seattle Aquarium. I'm really interested in the ocean, so I follow some things related to that. That's something I would share in an interview, so I will sometimes include that in my LinkedIn profile. And then in terms of figuring out who's a credible source and who's not, your assessment is probably just as good as mine is. There is a lot of information out there, and a lot of it is conflicting. And that's one of the reasons why I point out that your profile is very personal. Your profile is a representation of who you are and how you want to present yourself. So you want to think about what your personal professional brand is. And if you see two different pieces of advice that are conflicting, pick the one that sounds the best to you, try it for a while. If it's not working, try something else. My headline was actually in the more like sentence structure of, you know, I build future leaders and, you know, amplify impact or whatever it is. And I actually switched it up about 6 months ago to this new format, and I found more success with this. So unfortunately, I don't have a clear, like, this is what's good and this is what's bad. I mean, I'm sure that you can find other people telling you to do different things than what I'm telling you to do. Unfortunately, there's a lot of information out there, and it's really up to you to kind of choose who you want to listen to.
Yes, unfortunately, there's no rule book about how to do this kind of stuff. It's all very subjective and based on people's experience and insight, but it can be somewhat different. So you do what works for you. That's the great thing about it, is there's a lot of different ways to show your authenticity, and just kind of start practicing and start doing a few of these things, I think, is key.
Yeah. One way that you can use to kind of filter is if there's a particular company or a particular job that you're interested in, you can look for people that work at that company or people who are in that job and look at what they're posting and what they're doing, and then pattern your profile and your posts after that. For example, people who are recruiting for Starbucks tend to look for very different things than, say, people who are recruiting for Amazon.
Great. So we are actually over time. So went a little bit longer today than what we normally do, but we had such great content. This was wonderful, Chelsea. Thank you so much for your time. It's always...
Sarah, can I just say thank you as well? I wanted to just say that was so awesome, and I wanted to say thank you, like, with my voice rather than in the chat. My name's Montana, and I'm a public speaking coach, and this is like the best presentation I've seen in ages, and I just really wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much. So useful.
You're so kind.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you, Montana.
I will take that.
Yes, yes. So wonderful. Chelsea also has a great one-pager of tips and tricks that you can find in our Facebook group. If you aren't a member of that, you just search the Swing Shift community, and ask to to join that private group. And you also get a ton of resources. We did this live on Facebook. You can find the recording there. You can interact with others. It's a great safe space to talk about, issues, challenges, positive things that are happening during your job search. So